In this video, we are going to compare an All-Clad aluminum core tri-ply D3 frying pan to another All-Clad pan. This one is a 5-ply copper core. If this one costs twice as much as this one, is it twice as good a pan at twice the cost? Who knows? Let's see if we can find out. Hi and welcome to Uncle Scott's Kitchen. Today we are talking All-Clad frying pans, and specifically the D3 versus the copper core. Now around here, this has been a little bit of a subject of discussion around the channel, a little bit of controversy. We don't really have too many big controversies in the frying pan arena, but a little bit of discussion about these pans. Now, I have been using this copper core pan for well over 2 years now. I finally got around to putting up a review of it a couple of months ago, and I gave it a thumbs up. I really like the copper core, and as soon as I put that review up though, lots of people started pounding on me and saying, what about the D3? What about the D3? It costs less, you don't need any more than the D3. The copper core, you're just wasting your money. They also reminded me that America's Test Kitchen likes the D3 model. So I've got a lot of the D3 people coming out of the woodwork to kind of pound on me a little bit. I had never used a D3. So I started looking at them online, and they went on sale a few weeks ago, and I decided to get one. Now I'm working on a big in-depth review of the D3. I don't have that quite ready to go yet. But what I thought we might do today is at least compare the two pans, see where the differences lie, and see if we can decide if one is truly better than the other or not. Some of this is going to be objective. I'm going to bring out my newest toy. This is by Thermometer. This is a surface probe thermometer. So one of the things we're going to do is put both pans on burners and use the old surface temperature probe here to try and figure out which one is more responsive and heats more quickly and evenly. Get some good data there. Some of this is going to be objective. There are some differences, just factual differences between the pans. Some of this is going to be subjective. Might throw out an opinion or two, probably get myself in a little more trouble. Now that said, let's start out with a high-level description of the pans. The D3 is a tri-ply pan, 3 layers. Both pans have stainless steel cook surfaces and induction compatible stainless steel exteriors. On the inside, this D3 has a thick layer of aluminum. The copper core, believe it or not, has a copper core inside. So you get the stainless steel inside and out, but in the middle is a copper core surrounded by 2 thinner layers of aluminum. So you get 3 internal layers on this pan. And these two pans come at vastly different price points. Now, the algorithm changes prices by the second. There's hyperinflation. These things go on sale. Sometimes there's a coupon on one and not the other. But in general terms, the copper core costs about twice as much as a D3. And the D3 usually comes with a lid. So I got this copper core, like I said, I got it a couple years ago, right at around $250 or so. I think they list for about $265 these days. I got this D3 with lid in the last month for about $122. So roughly half the price for a D3 with lid versus the copper core. That's fairly significant. Now both of these are the 12-inch models. And one thing you notice right off the bat is that the copper core has a helper handle. The D3 does not. And personally, I like a helper handle. A lot of times, especially in the winter times when we can't go outside and use the barbecue grill, we will sear a steak or two in the copper core on the stovetop and then move that pan from the stovetop to the oven. If you got a couple of 1-pound big steaks in this thing, moving that to the oven, I kind of like having that helper handle on there. The D3 does not have a helper handle. Now, along with the helper handle come 2 more rivets. So a little bit more maintenance and cleanup, keeping those rivets clean, which I probably don't do as good a job with as I should. And visually, you can tell a difference between the handles. The handle on the copper core is longer. It also has this gap here to help with heat dissipation. The handle on the D3 is a little shorter and a little bit thinner. Now, handles on All-Clad pans, I'm going to describe them as functional. They work. They're probably not going to win a lot of beauty or design awards. They work just fine. And when it comes to pan handles, they're definitely fancier than something like a strip steel handle, which you might find on a carbon steel like this Matfer, but they are not as fancy as some of the handles you might see on a French pan, like a Debouillé or even a Mauviel. A little bit more personality and beauty in those handles. Of course, that's a subjective opinion. These work just fine. Now, these All-Clad pans are all-clad. Go figure. That means that those internal layers, those go all the way around the bottom of the pan and up the sides. And you can actually see the layers on the edge of the pan. If I put both pans side by side or stack them on top of each other, you can really see a difference in the thickness of those internal layers. Now here, I think there has been some confusion because on several different websites, I saw people saying that the copper core was thinner and lighter than the D3. That is not true. It is actually half true. The copper core is actually thinner than the D3. You can see it here, the difference in the thickness of those internal layers. But it is significantly heavier. So I was very surprised when I got my D3 in because everything I had read said that this pan was lighter and thinner. I picked this up for the first time and holy cow, this pan is significantly lighter. You can actually tell a big difference. On my kitchen scale here, the D3 weighs in at close to 2 3/4 pounds. The copper core weighs in at close to 3 3/4 pounds. Not exactly, but there is about an entire pound difference between these two pans. Now, some of that difference is because this has a helper handle, 2 rivets, and a longer regular handle. But also, let's walk carefully out onto the thin ice of science and talk about metals. The aluminum layer in this pan is thicker than the copper layer in this pan. However, I looked this up on the internet, and therefore it is true that copper is much more dense as a metal than aluminum. So for the same volume of metal, copper is going to weigh more than the same volume of aluminum. So even though the copper layer in this pan is thinner than the aluminum layer in this pan is actually significantly heavier than this one. So that is actually a big deal, and maybe one of the reasons that this pan has a helper handle and this one doesn't. And this gets into that opinion area. Some people prefer a lighter pan. They're easier to move around. Me, I don't move a pan around all that much. It mainly sits there on the burner. And I'm a big guy, and I really don't mind a heavier pan. They feel more substantial to me. So in that respect, I kind of prefer the copper core. Now, another thing I saw on several websites is that people were saying that the copper core should be more durable than the D3. I don't think I agree with that. I think these should both be equally durable. I think they're both well made. They're very similar on the exteriors, and I can't think of any reason why one would be more durable than the other. I think if you take care of these pans, they should outlast you or me. Another little nuance on the bottom of the pan, the copper core says handcrafted in the USA, whereas the D3 is merely made in the USA. Now, when it comes to look and feel, the D3 is a little bit more of a plain Jane. There are no highlights on the outside of the pan, whereas the copper core, if you're into nice cookware, nice kitchen stuff, you do get some copper accents on the lip of the pan and this copper band around the bottom middle here. But when it comes to look and feel, I think the copper core is a little fancier than the D3. Okay, which pan heats the fastest? Which one is more responsive? I did some testing. I used my ThermoWorks Thermopin 1 And also use this guy. This is my new toy. This is also by Thermoworks. This is a surface probe thermometer. Has this little thing on the end that's used for taking the temperatures of flat surfaces, such as frying pans. And what I did was heat both of these pans on various eyes on this stove. Now I would use the small, the medium, and the large burners. And what I would do is sometimes I would turn the gas up, sometimes turn it down. But for each test, I would leave that gas constant. And then I would place one pan on there and take some readings every 30 seconds, remove that, then place the other one on there and do the same thing. Now, for some of the tests, I heated the pans dry. For other tests, I put a cup of cooking oil in each pan and heated them that way. Took a bunch of readings, and what I found out is that, and I'm going to point out, I'm not in a science lab, but what I found here on my stove is that the copper core is a faster skillet. It heats up a lot faster at a given time interval, 1 minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, what have you. It will be, generally speaking, 15 to 30 degrees hotter than the D3. Now, another way to look at that is that the D3, although it takes a little bit longer, it eventually gets to the same temperature. For example, in one of the tests with oil, at 2 minutes, the copper core was at 225 degrees. At 2 minutes, the D3 was at 195 degrees. So about a 30 degree temperature differential there. However, at 2.5 minutes, the D3 had caught up and it was at 225 degrees. So we can say that the copper core, it heats faster and it's maybe a little more responsive. The D3 seems to be, in general, about 30 seconds slower to arrive at a given temperature, in general. So like me, in the mile run in 6th grade PE, the D3 is a little slower, but eventually gets there. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It all depends. Now, some people think that maybe the copper core is too responsive. I don't think so. I've been using it for 2 years. And here is a pro tip for you guys. If you're using the copper core and it seems like the pan's a little too hot, if something is cooking a little too fast, I'm going to pause here. You can grab a pen to write this down. What I do is reach down here and just turn the gas down a little bit. Seems to work like a charm. All kidding aside, I don't think that responsiveness is any kind of a problem, especially for anyone that's kind of a cooking nut or a foodie into cookware. Someone watching this video is not going to be a problem. I think the responsiveness is probably a good thing overall. So all that said, which pan is better? Which one would I recommend? Now, as I mentioned, I've been cooking in the copper core for well over 2 years now. Very happy with it. And just cooking in the D3, I haven't seen anything that's going to make me change to go D3 versus copper core. That being said though, and I'm working on a big review of the D3, it's going really well so far. It's doing a great job of cooking good food. So I think you can't really go too wrong with either choice. So which one might be better for you in your particular situation? It kind of depends on what type of consumer you are. If you are a money-grubbing, penny-counting skinflint, a value-oriented shopper, if you're a value-oriented consumer for whom performance for the money is your top priority, I think this D3 is a really good value, and it comes with a lid. So half the price comes with a lid, and you can cook a great meal in it. For someone who is an aspiring snoot, for someone who likes nice things in the kitchen. I know I do. We spent a fortune redesigning this kitchen when we gutted this house. Cookware, cooktops, kitchen stuff, it makes me happy. Sometimes in life, we just like to upgrade just a little bit. We don't always get the base model car. Sometimes you want leather with sunroof, tilt wheel with cruise control. You just do. I enjoy fancier, nicer cookware, and I know some of that's subjective, but with the copper, I do think that the copper core is a better looking pan. And that $120, $130 price difference, that is more than made up for me in terms of happiness. If food is only a pile of molecules, you can get a nice pile of molecules with either pan. If there's more to it than that, if cooking and nice kitchens and cookware make you happy, then I would go with the copper core. Now, if you would like to get either one of these pans, we have shopping links below. Also have links to the thermometers and temperature probes. Make sure you check those out. Thank you for watching. Look somewhere on the screen for links to other videos you might find enjoyable. And we'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.